Can you speak into your mic for a second?
Hello.
Okay, yeah. I'm neurotic about mics now. All right. Oh, wait, I didn't turn on my mic. Let's see. Okay. All right, so we're here today with Taalib August. It is February 7th, 2024. Wow. And it's an interview with Haley Dardar. This is for the series, the Language Keeper interview series. Today we are in Baton Rouge. We've started to sign the consent documents. Taalib will keep the intellectual property rights for this interview, and he'll give us limited license to put this interview on YouTube after we go through and create a cut that he is happy with. So, yeah, I think we're ready.
Okay.
So I guess to start things off, I'm gonna move this so we can see each other a little better. Could you tell us your life story a bit? Kind of tell us your life story in about 5 minutes.
So in 5 minutes, I was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana in 2003, February 15th, 2003, so my birthday's coming right up. I was born to Vicky Taalib, Auguste, and Bruce Auguste. My dad's from Opelousas, whereas my mom's from Baton Rouge. I grew up in both Opelousas and in Prairieville, Louisiana, so Ascension Parish. And going in between these two places, visiting my grandmother, both of my grandmothers, maternal and paternal, they kind of played a really big part in my life. Then from there, I went to school in Ascension Parish because my mom didn't want me to go to school in St. Landry Parish. And after high school, I ended up joining the United States Army with the National Guard of Louisiana, and I am now a college student at LSU.
What are you studying?
So I'm studying international studies with a heavy concentration in law. So after my next two semesters, I'll be going to law school.
Yeah. What made you make those choices, military and law school?
So military-wise, I've always been interested in it. It's always been something that's always been there. From the documentaries that I've watched to basically having not one but multiple family members who are all in the military. It's kind of like, okay, that's the path that just naturally going to go on to. So that's why the military kind of attracted me.
And law?
For law, it's basically because I've been seeing everything that's been happening around the state of Louisiana, coming from a family on my mom's side that, well, my mama wasn't really well off. My grandmother on my dad's side wasn't necessarily well off. Then seeing how that affects not only my aunt but my uncle, and then looking at where some of the folks in my family on my mom's side actually lived, and how policies and how legal systems and how that all worked and wasn't really successful, that kind of pushed me to go towards law.
And how many years are you in graduate school or undergraduate, and how many years do you have left to your degree?
So I am currently a junior of undergraduate. I have one more year, so 2 more semesters, and after that I should have 3 more years.
Never ends.
Never ends.
Well, I met you, Taalib, through the work that you do in keeping language. And so, can you tell me a little bit about what brought you into being someone who's active within the language sphere?
So when it comes to languages, specifically Louisiana Creole and both Louisiana French, well, those are languages that I grew up with. Hearing them all the time, I spoke them myself. I still speak them. And it wasn't really until high school where I started saying, okay, maybe I can't do something. My teachers, I had 2 French teachers. One of them really made a big impression on me, and her last name was Smith. She was from St. Martinville. Her dad spoke French, but she didn't she did not like the French that her dad spoke. Most likely he did speak Creole, but she didn't like it, and that kind of rubbed me a little bit of the wrong way. But then she started noticing that hey, there's younger folks that actually are doing things within this realm, and you can do it too. And I was like, maybe I can. Let's see what happens if I try. And so, getting started, and it was a little slow. I ended up meeting a man by the name of Jonathan Myers, or Jonathan Maillet, also known as Radbois Farouche. And he sort of became like a mentor to me. And it was actually through him that I started navigating through this very complicated movement and this very complicated sphere of things. And then from him, I met folks in Louisiana, mainly Will McGrew and Drake LeBlanc, and it just spearheaded from there.
What do you feel like your role is within the language sphere?
I feel that my role is more of being more of an advocate for the regular person's voice, as I'm not this doctor of education, I'm not this doctor of linguistics, I'm not in a political seat. I'm just a regular person who just sees that hey, this is my culture, this is my heritage, this is my language. All the stories that I know, all the stories that tell me who I am, are through this language. So for me, my role is just to be the advocate for the regular person, to share their stories and promote their voice.
Do you feel like there's a lot of people who are in your role, or do you feel like that's something that's kind of missing in Louisiana?
I feel there's multiple people in my role. There's one thing about when it comes to these language groups is that everybody has multiple jobs. There's not one person with one job. There's one person with multiple jobs. So while yes, I'm sitting right here, there's somebody right down the road who's probably doing the same thing. Just you don't know it. And so yeah, there's most likely more people than me.
You mentioned that like your high school teacher was someone who was fundamental in you getting more involved in language. Was there a moment that did you speak your whole life, and were you active your whole life, or was there a moment where you decided that language was important?
Well, I spoke my whole life because I had folks on my dad's side who didn't speak English. On my mom's side, my mama had problems with her health, and so me, I was speaking Creole and French as a child. I grew up speaking these languages, communicating with family members, and so while my high school teacher basically propelled me into this role, those bases were already there.
What was the role of your family growing up in language? What were they feeling?
So the role of my family was like anybody else's. And I say that knowing that there's so many different everybody else's in the state of Louisiana. But what I mean is everything that, so language wise, everything was in the family. Everything was kept in the family. Stories, I heard a lot of stories like Compé Lapin, Compé Bouki, Madame Grandois, stories such as that. And those were mostly told throughout the language that they were supposed to be told in, such as Creole. And knowing certain family members in one language and then having to switch to a whole nother language at the end of it is just crazy. And so that's the role that my family truly played, actually developing me into this little linguist.
Do you feel like that was intentional on the part of your parents, or do you think that was something that just happened?
I think it just happened. I think it happened because it needed to happen. Because, as I said before, my dad's grandparents they did not speak a lick of English. My mom's side, my Momo was having problems with her health, so It's not necessarily that they wanted me to speak, it just happened. Somebody spoke to me in Creole, well, I was going to pick it up. Somebody spoke to me in French, I was going to pick it up. It was natural.
What language did you speak with your mother at home?
Mostly Creole until my mom passed away, and then we ended up switching more into English.
So why was your mother speaking mostly Creole to you?
Because she was speaking mostly to her mother in Creole. And a lot of times, whenever I would go to my mama's house, I was always with my mother. And so almost every single day, it was going back and forth between Momo and home.
So it's almost like your grandmother is the one who gave you the language.
Both of my grandmothers.
Thinking about, I think, this is the next question is really hard for a lot of people is because you have to just brag, and that's something that, people are just not ready to do. But you have achieved a lot within the work that you do, and the public on the internet doesn't know that necessarily. And so it's no other way but to brutally tell them of just like, what are some highlights of the work that you've done that you're really proud of?
Yeah, that's not easy.
Yeah.
I would say the thing that I'm most proud of is actually the first thing that I ever did, and that was La Creo Show, where I was going out recording with different folks throughout the state, some old, some young, just speaking to them in Creole and in French, getting their opinions on things, seeing where they were coming from, seeing about their lives. That's honestly my greatest achievement, because that showed me more perspectives of my own state that I never knew, and they got their voices out there as well.
What do you feel like you learned from that project?
I learned a lot. I learned a lot of history that I didn't know. I learned a lot of cultural practices that were foreign to me. I learned things about the past that my parents didn't want to tell me, that my grandparents didn't want to tell me, that was happening right across the street. Yeah, I learned how folks regarded language, how they regarded the stigmatization of both, one, the heritage languages, and two, all the languages that are coming now.
How did that experience shape the work that you're doing now?
I think it pushed me to going more towards humanity side, not necessarily seeing everything through economic viewpoint, seeing it through you have to do this for like a better education type of viewpoint. It's more of seeing it as, well, if he doesn't speak that language, he's going to lose so much knowledge of his own family. If he doesn't speak that language, how is he going to know to build that palmetto? So that's how I started viewing it after La Creo Show. And I speak mostly in French and Creole throughout the day, so
You can switch back and forth, it's fine.
so seeing as the way these folks are actually forming their identities, forming their viewpoint of themselves, if they don't have their language, what does that truly mean for them? So that's where La Creo Show pushed me.
What started La Creole Show for you?
Ça fait l'été commencé pendant la pandémie. C'était pendant la pandémie et quand nous avons été enfermés dans la maison. Et puis, pour le moment, t'es comme, ok, moun, yo les voir quelque chose. Yo les voir quelque chose dans nos langages. Yo les tendre quelque chose dans nos langages. And so I decided with Jonathan Maillet, Cliff Saint Laurent, Mika Gisclair, let's just record something on Zoom. And that's what started La Creo Show.
So, thinking about that pandemic start of, just trying to, move something forward, thinking about the work that you're doing now, what are else are you? What other highlights are you thinking of? What are the things that you're moving forward?
Les autres choses, comme on peut dire, c'est une autre chose importante, c'était comme on était venu vice-président de l'organisation catholique. Et puis aussi, en ce moment, l'Assemblée. So Creole Inc. being started in 1987, the organization that gave us the Creole flag, the flag that everybody knows to this day, joining that organization, then becoming the vice president of it, sitting down, talking with folks who have been doing the work since the 70s, talking with folks who have lived through multiple experiences. Some were children during segregation, and then coming out of segregation, now they have to deal with this Cajunization stuff, and then go throughout all that. Now you have to deal with the stigmatization of, hey, you're identifying as a Creole, you're losing your language first off, and then you decide to make an organization. What are you doing? You know? So my second highlight of this whole entire thing is actually being a part of that organization and seeing as what they did in the past and trying to help them propel towards the future. As right now, we're trying to get more younger folks in it. Younger folks are now taking the initiative to preserve the Creole culture and the Creole language.
How do you feel that organization has transformed or bloomed you as a person?
It's showed me that throughout all the trials and tribulations that happen, that at the end of the day we all have to work together. And that's something that Herbert Wiltz, who ended up becoming more of like a grandfather that I never really had, that's something that he's been telling me and been teaching me. And then you have Paul Clues, who ends up becoming this figure that he showed me how to navigate through this little political sphere. I can say as of right now, from high school to Creole Inc. has shifted me even more and molded me even more.
How did you get involved with Creole Inc.?
I got involved with Creole Inc. with Tiffany Guillory Thomas.
Who's that?
So Tiffany Guillory Thomas is one of the most trailblazing ladies of Louisiana culture, Louisiana languages. If you have never heard of her, you should. She is amazing.
Okay.
And
How did you meet her?
I ended up meeting her through Taalib, Louisiana. So it's like everything's like a little spider web from one to the next. But just to speak on Tiffany Guillory Thomas, there's a certain theme that you see in Louisiana, and I was actually talking about this earlier today with the kids at University High. A lot of times the cultural barriers that don't often get talked about are the women, who are the ones who preserve everything. My mom, my grandmothers, Tiffany Guillory Thomas, Sybil Klein, Deborah Clifton, the two women who actually formed the Creole movement of today, Deborah Clifton and Sybil Klein. You don't really hear about them all the time. And so Tiffany Guillory Thomas is that lady that is not really being talked about that much, even though she plays a very important role.
Why do you think that is?
I just think it's because a lot of folks overlook and they see what's flashy, who's talking the loudest. And you could talk the loudest and be right, but that does not mean you're doing the bulk of the work. And so that's what I think is really happening. It's just folks are not hearing the folks in the background. They're just hearing the folks in the front.
So you mentioned a few names here, and I want to get back to your relationship with Debbie at some point. But getting back to that question of how did you meet Tiffany, or how did that happen? Because she introduced you to Creole Inc.
Correct. So I met her through Tele Louisiane when Jonathan Myers was still my mentor, and she was going through her process of speaking Creole, learning Creole, because she didn't grow up with Creole. She grew up hearing it, but she didn't speak it. And so, through Jonathan Myers, that's when I met her, and we started to build this sort of relation of becoming very more familiar with each other. And next thing knowing, she was actually a part of Tele Louisiane. Didn't even know that. I was an intern of Tele Louisiane for about 4 months. Didn't even know that she was a part of it until I ended up going to a thing for Tele Louisiane, and there she was. That's how we met.
And how did she introduce you to Creole?
So she ended up introducing me to Creole Inc. when Creole Inc. was looking for more folks to join. And me, I didn't truly know about Creole Inc. as much because even though Creole Inc. went from this large organization, over time it sort of shrinked and decreased just because there just wasn't enough folks joining. There wasn't enough folks who were, one, had the good health, and then two, had time. And so she introduced me into Creole Inc. And from there, I paid my $35. Originally, I paid $35 with my mom's money.
So your grandma paid $35. Yeah.
And then I joined.
So what made you join again for a second year? What was that first year experience that helped you feel?
The first year experience, it was what would I say, slow. As not a lot was actually going on, but during that first year, I got to see all the events that they usually plan. So you have Creole Heritage Day or Creole Culture Day, which is usually hosted at Vermilionville in Lafayette. Then there is the Creole Heritage Awards or the Creole Culture Awards. I keep on forgetting the name, but same concept. And the Creole Culture Awards actually promotes and awards all the folks, farmers, musicians, regular people, lawyers, folks who are doing work in their community. Our last one, we actually gave the Hall of Fame to Mr. Goldman Thibodeau, who is, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 90. He's in his 90s. He's up there. And he is one of the only musicians to this day that still plays Lala music.
What is Lala music?
Lala music is the old Creole music before there was a Zydeco.
Oh. And he still plays, or?
He still plays. He released an album about a year ago or 2 years ago, one of the two. And I think he's retired now. At least he says he's retired.
He retired early. Wow. So you mentioned another highlight. I guess, is there any more that you feel like that makes Creole Inc. a highlight to you?
The way they started. And the reason why I say the way they started is because what I was told on their start was one of the first things that they did was try to help the Haitians, try to help some of the Haitian foreign exchange students who could not find houses, as people weren't opening up houses for them in Louisiana. And so after hearing that story about how Creole Inc. started and why they started, and one of the first things that they did, I was like, okay, this is an organization that has the best heart, that has my best vision in mind, that has my best I don't even know, the future in mind, And it's probably gonna be the worst English ever recorded, but there's always talk here.
No judgment here. Wow, I didn't know that about Creole. Like, I didn't know that's how they began as an organization, and that's with Debbie, right?
So Miss Deborah Clifton, if I can remember, I don't think she was one of the original ones. So it was Herbert Wiltz, Paul Clues, Geneva Phillips, Sylvia Clues. You had Miss Hernandez. You had, who else was there? Mr. John, Mr. Broussard. Mr. Broussard, he's on the radio. And I think I got everybody. But Miss Deborah Clifton, she started teaching Creole at UL. And that's where you see this big movement really start. It's because she starts advocating for it. Now she doesn't really want to be in the spotlight, but she is one of the first ones to get everything done.
Now, what is your relationship with Deborah Clifton?
It's a very distant one, meaning that I've mostly only talked to her a couple times, and that's because she doesn't want to be in the spotlight. I'm a respecter, you know, and knowing that she's been through a lot, and knowing that she has done a lot, I don't think I need to bother her. Because at a certain point, doing language revitalization, being a sort of language keeper, does become tiring. That's a sad thing to say, but it's true. Especially when not all the dominoes are falling.
So, what tires you?
All the bickering, the fighting, the trying to change people's opinions, trying to change people's minds, which for me, I think sometimes that could be futile. And instead of trying to change this person's mind, just do what you do and let your actions change the minds of them. But mostly all the bickering, the fighting, the putting personal pride and ego above everything, that tires me to the point of I've only been doing this for what, 3 years if you consider La Creo show being very, very active. And I'm already tired. I'm only 21 next week.
I feel that. I feel that. What do you feel like would make your work easier, or, you know, yeah.
Collaboration. I think one of the biggest problems that Louisiana has in any language movement across the state is collaboration. That's something that we see in the Creole community. That's something that we see in the French-speaking community. It might be the same for the Homo Language Project. But collaboration.
What does collaboration mean to you? Because I know that there's a lot of people who do projects together, or is there a way that you want to see that? I feel like that's a big word.
I mean, we don't have to like each other. I don't have to like you, you don't have to like me. But let's not fight in public. If we're going to do something next to each other, by each other, let's do it with each other, you know? So for me, collaborating is, hey, I have this project. I know that I cannot do this by myself. I know you don't like me, but can you help me? Being the community that you're supposed to be. Like, you know, when you were younger, you had to go down there and say you got in trouble with your mama. And then you have to go, I don't know, your dog ran away and everybody's looking for your dog. That's a community, you know. I'm just saying that because that's what happened to me.
Your dog ran away?
Yeah. And so we had the whole neighborhood looking for her.
Did you guys find her?
We did.
Mm-hmm.
He was like just right around the corner.
Yeah.
But that's to me what collaborating is, being a community. Because in a community, you have a multitude of people who don't like each other. Yes, you have prideful folks. Yes, you have folks who want to control everything. But work together. One of the reasons why we can't really get nothing done is because we don't really work together. We possibly could have had a Creole school, or at least gotten Creole in schools in the last couple of decades. But nobody's working together. Everybody wants to be on the top.
What do you feel like is the state of, do you connect a lot with the, with, I know that you have a lot of connections within Creole and within French. Are you connecting also to other languages across Louisiana?
I want to. And that's something that I've been discussing with multiple folks, mainly in my own circle, about what does it truly mean to be a minority language and not support other minority languages. Especially knowing that there wasn't just one language spoken here. So I've tried to connect with the Tunica, notably through Dr. Nathan Wente, who was working with them. And that's still a connection that I'm still going through. I want to connect with the Chinamacha, mainly due to the fact that, one, they actually have a model that I think we should follow. I want to connect with, now they have the Sicilian group that's showing up. Never knew that the Sicilian group was even going to show up. But they're showing up now. And when I was actually connected with the Isleños, with Andrew Milashoff, but he's been preoccupied, so that's more of like slowing down. But yeah, I want to, and I am trying to connect with other languages in state.
So I think the last question, or like the last point of discussion, is where do you find inspiration within your work? Or what is the thing that makes you really excited going forward?
So for me, the inspiration that I get presently is knowing that folks are waking up to the realization that they get to connect a little bit deeper with their own roots. What excites me is when I find a new story that has been lost. When I find a audio tape that I haven't heard ever. Or when I find the fact that this kid who has my last name, who told me that his grandma used to say Piti Sila, and he did not even know it was Creole. And this is a kid in 8th grade. That what excites me, that what propels me to keep on continuing. To know that he remembers that from his grandmother. And that's something that's probably going to stay with him for the rest of his life. And then he meets somebody with the same last name as him, who speaks the language that his grandmother spoke. That excites me. And that inspires me.
So what do you feel like is next for you? What are the big projects or things that we can look forward to?
So, one big project that I want to do is actually something that you're doing to me right now. And that is recording stories from folks who are in the Creole community and who have done work. So Deborah Clifton, Herbert Wills, etc., making a documentary about that. That's something that I really plan on doing. Continue to write books. I wrote Le Langage à l'Espoir. I wrote Couchement. I wrote a new book called Créole dans la Gazette that I'm hoping to get published. And just keep on writing more of those books to tell a little bit more stories of Louisiana and Louisiana Creole, but also create new stories. I'm also hoping to get some projects of education, as even though I said I'm not really necessarily more of the economic and education guy. I do see that it is important as well in maintaining the language and maintaining the culture. So working with different Creole communities such as Seychelles or Mauritius who have institutes and seeing what they can do to help us. That's what I'm currently working on right now.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your book work? Because that didn't come out at all earlier.
So my two books that I wrote earlier, Kushmach, it's mostly like a beginner book. So it's a book where folks can write in it. They can circle words that they don't know. They can highlight words, etc., which is why it's mostly spaced out. Whereas Le Langage de l'Espoir is more of an analyzation of Louisiana Creole dialects through stories that were found in dissertations in the 1930s, through Louisiana folktales, from stories from Louisiana folktales, from stories from audio tapes. That's all written in Creole. The book that I just wrote, Creole dans la Gazette, also written in Creole, actually takes all of the I don't even know a good word for it, but the communiques from the newspapers of Louisiana from 1867 to present day that were all written in Creole. And in the book, they're still written in their regular original form, but it tells the story of what these folks were talking about, who these folks were talking to. So that's my book work.
What made you interested in doing that?
I've always liked writing. Writing is something that I think clears my mind and it helps me develop my thoughts and opinions more clearly. And so knowing that a lot of research has not been finished, I really dived into researching. And once I found this first newspaper clipping that was written in 1888 about Antoine, I was like, wow, they actually had Creole in the newspaper at that time. And from there, I went into a hole. I went into a rabbit's hole and I could not get out, and I'm still not out of it. Because now I'm looking for personal letters from between families that were written in Creole.
Have you found any, or where
So in Louisiana, I have yet, because I'm still doing that research. But in Haiti, there's many. And so if they wrote some in Haiti, you can bet that Louisiana families wrote some in here.
If you could clone yourself 3 times, where would you put the other Taalibs out there?
If I can clone myself 3 times, I would put one of myself most likely in. That is an interesting question. That's a really interesting question. I never thought about that. So I'm gonna go with language community wise, communities that I've been intrigued by. So one community that I would clone myself and put myself in would actually be more of the Navajo. When I went to Fort Huachuca, Arizona, after AIT, I drove around through Arizona.
What's AIT?
Advanced Individual Training.
So part of your military training? Okay.
And so I drove around through Arizona. Loved it because where I was in Sierra Vista, nothing but Spanish. Nothing but Spanish. Best Mexican food that you ever have. But once we started driving up through Arizona, going towards the Grand Canyon, we actually ended up going to the Navajo reservation and seeing DNA written everywhere, hearing older folks actually speaking it, and then I was kind of like, this is a whole nother world to me. This is so foreign, so exotic, but it's so America. It's so American at the same time. I was like, okay, if ever a day I come back to Arizona, I'm coming back here specifically. So that's why I put one of me. Another one of me, well, I would probably say, um, golly, where would I put another one of me? Can there be multiple of me's?
There's three of you guys.
There's only three.
Yeah.
There's a lot of communities that I would like to go to, that I like to stay in. I guess one of them would be the in the Gullah Geechee, notably of South Carolina. And mainly because one, they have been isolated for so long. Two, they kind of show resistance that I think Creoles and Gullah Geechee sort of share. But they've come on to so many cultural aspects that is pretty amazing to see. And seeing how they're so connected to their land, so connected to their family and history. It would be cool seeing a Creole version of Louisiana Creoles, but on the East Coast. Not to say that Gullah Geechee are Creoles of Louisiana, but no, I don't want to put that out there. Just saying we have similarities. And I know you didn't give me a fourth option, but a fourth option would be Hawaii.
Okay, why?
Knowing that the Hawaiians are going through this sort of similar situation, but their situation is a little bit different, as theirs is more of colonialization and occupation, etc. Seeing the Hawaiians go through a similar language situation, and then actually prospering. There you go. And
Yeah.
and seeing the Hawaiians not only have English, Hawaiian, but also Hawaiian Pidgin. And seeing how they navigate through all these different facets. That's something that I really admire and that I really want to learn from. We have our immersion schools, but theirs is doing a lot better.
That's really good. They're really doing something out there. So, all right, another question. You have three interns.
Three interns.
Three interns working for you. They're all interested in language. What do you do?
I would bring them to every single community, every single person that I know that is older who speaks French and Creole. Why? Because if they're truly interested in language, they have to be interested in the people. If they're not interested in people, there's no reason to know the language. That's what I'll do.
Well, with that, I mean, just thinking about it, is there, I feel like we're wrapping to the end. Is there any final thoughts or anything that you're having on your spirit that you haven't had a chance to talk about yet?
Moi, c'est dit que pour moi, moi, c'est l'aimer voir la Louisiane comme une place qui célèbre toutes les langues d'héritage. Une place qui profite de toutes les cultures riches qui te fleurissent dans nos États. Moi, c'est l'aimer vivre dans une place qui pas les fait l'argent, juste pour faire l'argent, mais colliser l'héritage, colliser les langages, colliser toutes les affaires pour raconter une histoire. Et pour vraiment connaître l'histoire. Et progresser dans l'avenir. C'est ça la Louisiane. C'est ça la Louisiane comme on les vive. Ça c'est la Louisiane comme on les préserver, on les fournir pour mes enfants, pour mon grand pitié, tout ça. toutes les générations qui vont venir. C'est ça comment on les voit.
I think continuing that life depends on us valuing it in ways. And I appreciate and thank you for valuing your language and doing the work you do.
Merci à toi.
I think that's it. Cool. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, let's see if we can. Let me see if I can correctly turn this off. Okay. Let's see, did it take?
Yeah, doing English stuff is very weird.